Business people and public organizations across a wide range of industry and services have begun increasingly to identify maturation and commoditization as emerging challenges. Whether because of globalization, access, maturing technology, ease of imitation, decreasing barriers to entry, open standards in technology markets, or pressures from customers, more and more companies and organizations are feeling the intensity of competitive markets. Governments are also feeling the pressure of the public's demand for more effective services. And under those circumstances, everyone wants to find ways to grow. But the real power lies in doing so profitably, and that takes serious work. Is this the world you find yourself operating in today? Are those some of the same challenges affecting your businesses and organizations? Working in that environment, how can one be successful? As William Jennings Bryan reminds us, quote, "Destiny is not a matter of chance. It is a matter of choice. It is not a thing to be waited for. It is a thing to be addressed. And that takes serious work." Organizations of all types find that without having laid the foundational cornerstone, their future is likely to be in jeopardy. That cornerstone? Developing and living a strategic vision. And that takes serious work. Over the past 10+ years, I've spoken about many different aspects of strategic visioning. In the early years, we addressed various steps in the process of creating a vision. During the past few years, we have focused on how the mindsets, experiences, and thinking of those involved in leading the process unconsciously can limit the options considered for developing a strategic vision. This year, the focus of our discussion will return to the roots of developing strategic vision, the overall processes for strategic visions with linkage to intuition. I'm referring to a process that involves art and science. Developing a vision is akin to time travel. As you are about visioning, and as you think about visioning, we frequently jump to the future. However, good strategic visions are deeply rooted in the best of the past, the best of the present as far as we understand the dynamics of the current state, the momentum of current trends known and emerging into the future that is unknown. Unless all of these are considered, the robustness of the organization's ability to adjust, cope, and capitalize on the future may be in jeopardy. Let's begin with the past. Each of your organizations has a history that should be understood for what it really was, and not the illusionary reality revisionist history would like to make it. How frequently do you hear a phrase about the good old days? You are looking for the real old days. You are searching for those attributes that were at the heart of your success. What beliefs drove your approach to the markets and the customers? What pockets of excellence were the magnets that attracted customers to your door, your products, your services? What beliefs and processes allowed innovation to flourish and leapfrog competitors? What aspects of your organizational culture enabled engagement and excellence? What market dynamics and trends were occurring? How were the drivers of change managed in a way that accelerated learning and growth? What organizational tools facilitated success? Essentially, as you reflect on your own organization, you are clarifying the competencies that made you what you are today. If you wish to build a future, it can only emerge from your strengths. It is the only leverage you have, even if you must make some radical adjustments to remain competitive in the future. It's the same principle you should use when setting personal goals. For example, let's say you have identified that to be a more effective leader, you need to refine how you communicate with your staff, especially in establishing early stages of a relationship. Let's also say that at the same time, you are very good at establishing rapport and dealing with clients or customers. If you wish to address communicating with your staff more effectively, the tool that you have to use is the competency of dealing with your clients. By applying that set of skills in the context of building employee relationships, you can achieve your goal. Leveraging our strengths to master new competencies. As one of my professors would chide, quote, "Why would you learn to use a new tool when the only tool you need is one you already have mastered?" Unquote. So what have you mastered that made you what you are today and your organizations? A rigorous analysis of the past can provide a significant amount of data. However, the data may be incomplete. We are blessed with brains that process vast amounts of information. The conscious mind, where we take on important mental tasks, and the unconscious mind, what research psychologist David Meyer calls the mind's basement, a place where we delegate most of our thinking and decision-making to the masses of cognitive workers busily at work there, he says, a place where intuition resides, defined by Webster as, quote, "the capacity for direct knowledge, for immediate insight without observation or reason," unquote. Hence, in addition to the analytical data, we should consider including the intuitive insights people who lived the experience discovered. Information based on learned rules and patterns they can't articulate. A word of caution, however. Always balance intuitions with available evidence, or the conclusion could be wrong. Why? As research psychologist David Myers writes, quote, "We reconstruct memories as we withdraw them from storage," unquote. And our current expression of the experience may be significantly altered from our original understanding. Returning to our time travel concept, secondly, the focus moves to the present. Like the analysis of the past, you should be as rigorous about looking at your current competencies, capabilities, and capacities, organizational culture, markets, clients and customers, competitors, and the drivers of profit. Review relevant trends in the business environment and appraise them from the company's point of view. Pay close attention to those emerging trends that appear worrisome, such as the ones cited at the beginning, maturation and commoditization, and could have a significant impact on your business or organization. At the end of the day, what has made your organization strong, and how does it fit into the marketplace? The challenge here is to be brutally honest in your assessment, and that takes hard work. Once again, test your conclusions with multiple players, clients, customers, employees throughout the organization. Check their intuitive interpretation of what is truly happening. To form a solid foundation for moving to the future, those leading the process must come together on what they together have in common and believe to be true. Are you in agreement on the analyses of drivers of success? Assumptions about how the organization functions to drive sustainable profitability? What imperatives you face based on your capabilities and the multiple trends affecting your existence? With agreements in hand, the time traveler now can look to the future. As before, a studied review of trends affecting the future should be completed. There are multiple groups and professionals who specialize in articulating future trends. Many are available through the Internet. One such professional is Dr. James Canton. Here are some examples of his, quote, top 10 trends for the near future, unquote. In the global business community, he sees, and I quote, business and technology have fused into one system, one conversation, and one strategy for one world. Second, innovations are about new business models, enterprise and marketplace collaboration. The capture and analysis of customer information about product service use, their needs, wants, desires, and behavior is mission critical to the enterprise. Another, the capacity of an organization to understand the key trends that will shape the future of technology, customers, society, and the marketplace will determine the survival of the enterprise, unquote. Here are some of the questions Dr. Canton suggests that are critical. How will changing customer demographics affect the business strategy? What workforce and what workplace shifts will attract talent? What are the top technologies and business processes that will shape competitive advantage? How will future economic trends affect the market? What new opportunities does science offer? What role does globalization and trade play? What are essential strategies to building an agile organization and navigating uncertainty? Whatever your business or organization or governmental agency, take advantage of accessing resources that makes the most sense to your set of circumstances. Remember to get other people's reactions, thinking, and insights and intuitions. Armed with the analyses, the data, the intuitional insights, the trends, one is now ready to create images of the future, or end states. Before we move there, however, who has been doing all of this time travel, and does it make a difference? The process of developing an understanding of the temporal landscape for an organization and for creating the strategic vision is one that must be driven by and inclusive of the leadership of the organization. Without this sponsorship, the process has little hope of being valuable to the organization and little hope of ever being realized. It is not the purview of the leadership alone. I'm certain you recognize that the analysis of the past, the present, and the future is not something the leadership is likely to complete independently. They will involve multiple people from multiple levels. By involving many people from multiple levels to give input, insight, and review, the strategic vision that unfolds ultimately is more challenging, more engaging, and more aligned. Thomas Edison was reported as saying, quote, "When there are two good ideas, a better third can be generated from them," unquote. When there are multiple people with multiple ideas, what do you think are the possibilities? Whoever is involved, the key is to place oneself in a future time, say 5 years or more out. Imagine that you're already there. Look around and describe what your company or organization is like, its success in the marketplace, its position, its size, etc. Describe in detail what you, your employees, your clients and customers, your competitors are saying. What's the business climate, the geopolitical climate, the community climate in which your organization resides? What is the organization most effective at doing? What are your strengths? What are the key drivers of your success? As we spoke in one of our earlier broadcasts, describe your future present using all your senses. Be as vivid in creating the image as possible. Because of the power of pictorial imagery, more and more groups are creating pictures or drawings of the future states. Many times during the process of drawing pictures, people capture important relationships or intuit connections among various components of the vision that may have escaped them. The process of creating pictorial image engenders inclusion of emotion. Another significant outcome, many times the experience of creating these images helps the group articulate a clear image to others, one that is more easily understood, one that seems to express more meaning because it clarifies how they're connected to it and can participate in achieving the future state. More than likely, you will find it beneficial to draw several images to continue to merge concepts and ideas until something clicks. One technique is to have various groups create images and create a collage of these drawings to provide a very rich input to the process. The synthesis of translating the images and their explanation by creators into words create the essence of your dream. Building on that approach and on the combination of possibilities resulting, you might decide to define several different end states. Keep in mind that all of the end states should be desirable and possible. Having several end states may provide flexibility in your planning, as well as prepare you for a wider variety of influences that might impact your journey to achieve the desired end state. Another technique some organizations are using to assist in setting future states is mind mapping, a process of displayed thinking. Today, mind mapping is most frequently software-based, providing easier access for greater participation of staff in the creation and review processes. Some of the software packages incorporate art and pictures to enrich the thinking and feed intuitive linking. For those focusing on penetrating global markets, an example of another very helpful process is Dr. James Canton's Future Maps. It is a process he uses to help organizations develop various global scenario views. While I don't have time to cover an example in this broadcast, you might take a look at his website address, which is now appearing on your screen. The article reference discusses 3 global scenarios for 2010. I think you will find them interesting and informative. Take a look. What might your organization have to do differently as you consider each scenario? What might be the impact of those global scenarios on your organization's capability and capacity for achieving success? What might you add to your deliberation if you were currently in the process of creating a vision for your organization? Whether you have created one future image, or if you have developed several appealing images of the future that likely may occur, by taking the time to look back from each one, you can develop a robust set of potential options, possibly providing a richer conversation, broadening the scope of what could be done, and potentially providing capability to make time-critical adjustments. For example, Intel uses that approach in their visioning process. Intel develops a range of 4 or 5 end states. Each end state is possible and desirable, or in their words, quote, all end states are possible futures that will all likely occur, unquote. They intentionally make them divergent to capture a broad range of alternatives. They avoid the best case, the most likely case, and the worst case alternatives. Starting with the various end states, Intel develops a set of scenarios. In setting the scenarios, they deal with all the issues that were determined in the earlier reviews of their past, their present, and the emerging trends and influences in their market. Key to this approach is that they are starting from the end state and moving back versus starting at the current state and looking out to determine scenarios. The benefit is how it impacts the thinking of the participants. As the conversations progress to establish frameworks for defining strategies, the mind is open to searching for solutions or alternatives to address influences, those perceived to be either positive or negative, versus unintentional barriers that close the mind to other options. While it may seem subtle, it can make an incredibly powerful difference. The concept is not new. Aristotle asserted in discussing future states, success hinges on changing vectors. Instead of looking out, you must place yourself out at some point of time in the future and look back. Strategic visioning, writes David Sibbitt of Grove Consultants International, is a, quote, process that engages the entire organizational community in integrating its best hindsight and foresight in aligned action, unquote. Time travelers scanning the temporal horizon, switching vectors, creating end states that ensure not just survival, but the ability to thrive, all are serious, hard work. Where are you in defining your destiny? After a short break for your questions, we'll look at additional considerations affecting development of strategic visions and share a few stories.
Let's begin with the first question and answer session. We will try to answer as many questions as possible. Therefore, we ask that only one question be asked per phone call and that these questions be as brief as possible. You may call the studio directly at the phone number or fax which appear on your screen. We'll remind you to make your phone calls at a distance from the monitor to avoid feedback. Our first question comes from Puebla, Mexico. Go ahead, please.
I'm calling from Puebla, from a school, and my question is the following. In the geopolitical context and the history of the educational institutions, is it possible, because sometimes we have to modify our central objective because of the geopolitical issues. So how can we then readapt the essential elements of the objectives in education?
So thank you for the question. And I understand the complexities of working in the geopolitical, of living in a geopolitical situation where you may be getting direction and changes of direction based on that. What I would suggest is this, that from an educational point of view and as a professional in the field, you recognize the things historically that have made you strong and what work. And I think one of the things as you think about visioning and moving into the future is how do you translate those strengths? How do you translate the things that have been working and that have been making you successful into the new future? While it might seem like it is counterproductive or will hold you back, you may discover that there are ways within the new view that you can accomplish the things that you want to. And so I would encourage you to be open to those possibilities, because if you're open to them, you have a chance of having those conversations.
Great. Thank you. We go to Sinaloa for the next question. Go ahead, please.
Sí, bueno. Mire.
Currently, we see this globalized and interdependency tendency in terms of markets and society. And to try and imagine in the future how we're going to be like in 3 or 5 years, everything changes. The environment, everything, geopolitical, social issues, everything. How could we actually establish an exercise to be able to really see into the future and get a sense of what the future might hold?
Well, it is a challenge because there are so many things happening. So I think what you have to look for are the key trends that impact you the most. Now, there might be some that are certainly going to come out of sort of left field, as we would say here in the States, or something that is unpredicted or unpredictable. But I do think that as you are thinking about the future, that you tend to think about more than one possibility. And so that not that you want to focus on 2 or 3 of them, but after you've developed them, pick one, but always be willing to go back and test. Always review. I think it's important that organizations tend to review on a regular basis to see what complexities they're currently facing and what forces are pushing against them. But I also believe that if you have a clear understanding of where you're going, that you can translate that information into something that's ultimately going to help you continue where you're headed. From a global perspective, I think it's quite difficult, depending on what size you are, to integrate into the global community. But I do think that you always have to have that as part of your current vision because of the interdependencies that are going on in the world, and have that as an awareness. So I would continue to look around for those who have been successful in that environment, and particularly those people potentially in your own field, to help you learn, enhance your understandings, and also look for clues that you might translate locally.
Great. Thank you. Great answer. I believe our next question is coming from Ecuador. Is that right? No. It's actually from Cuba. Go ahead, Cuba.
Our question is the following. With these fast ongoing changes currently, how practical is to envision the future of our organization 5 or 10 years from now? Thank you.
Okay, well, it may not be very practical 5 or 10 years from now. So as I think about a vision is something that is beyond what you currently know how to achieve. And so if that's 1 year out, or 2 years out, or 3 years out, and you don't know how to get there, I think you can use that as your guide. Because once you've developed your vision, of course, you develop strategies, your first major steps or milestones to achieve it. Once you know how to get to the end result, it's no longer a vision, and so you need to revisit and restate your vision because it has to be something that's not quite reachable at this point. So I wouldn't challenge yourself right out of the chute to go for 5 or 10 years if 1 to 3 years is certainly a challenge for you. So I think you just have to be realistic and play that.
Fantastic. And now we go to Ecuador. Go ahead, please.
Sí, buenos días. Mi pregunta es la siguiente.
Good morning. My question is the following. If the leaders of an organization aren't sufficiently motivated in order to vision the future, or if they're visioning this differently from the way that their employees are visioning it, what do you recommend? I'm referring specifically to public institutions, government institutions. Thank you.
Well, that's always a very big challenge, dealing with the government institutions. I do think that you need to take a lot of time in public participation to help educate the leaders in terms of the benefits and the values of looking at a direction that they may not currently see. Obviously, they are being impacted and also being influenced by certain folks. But I think as the population within a country or within an organization or within a particular community, if they are persistent and consistent in how they are sending their message and can help educate them, I believe that's a way of managing that process.
Thank you. Our next question is from Mexico. Go ahead, please.
La
Can we develop intuition, and to what elements of the personality is intuition linked to, and how can we then hire personnel that has a certain degree of intuition? Thank you.
Well, if I could intuitively answer that, I could be very wealthy. Thank you for the question. The intuition is something that we actually really don't control. It's part of our unconscious. We can be more aware of it, and we can feed our brains with information and facts and imagine things or attempt to be creative. But the intuitive process really works in our unconscious, and as such we need to create space. So as I said in the lecture piece, that as Dr. Myers says, that the part of our brain where all those people are working in the basement consistently, we have to give them time to process things and make connections. Because as I view intuition, I think of Dr. Roger Franz's previous broadcasts here, where he talked about intuition as just making connections where things don't seem to make sense at this point. And so if we feed enough information around it, the brain will continue to work until it makes a discovery, because it doesn't want to have any unbroken links in the chain.
Right. All right, great, thanks. Our next question comes from Lima, Peru. Go ahead, please.
Good morning. This is Felipe Salazar from Lima, Peru, and my question is the following. I would like to know if organizations are already implementing transactional analysis when we are implementing strategical plans. Thank you very much.
Yes, organizations are using transactional analysis as they prepare. It's something that I'm not very closely associated with or familiar with, but I know that organizations do use that, and so I must leave it at that.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for your questions. Let's move to the second module of our program.